the transition to a new Rotary year and a new Rotary president. And one of the key aspects of Rotary, even in its founding, was the idea of shared leadership and rotating meetings to different places. Of course, our meeting is online. We sometimes will meet in person about once a month for either fellowship or a service project. But it's exciting to be a part of an organization that really believes in shared leadership, and looking forward to, in the month of July, having a whole new slate of leaders take responsibility for the club and its development in the next year. We've been excited in our first year to be able to be participants in many things in our Rotary district, but looking tonight, especially looking forward to finding out more about the Rotary Foundation and how a small club like ours and an affordable club can continue to be a part of a really important aspect of Rotary, the giving and the way that the giving works and the way that Rotary is able to multiply the investments of its members into the common good. So we're looking forward to hearing about that more tonight from Barry Phillips, our District Foundations Chair. But until then, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Deanne, our current year Secretary and President-elect, to give us updates for our club.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. So first thing on our list as an update is our celebration of our charter anniversary, so our charter birthday. We're looking to do at least one social event, one service event, and maybe a fundraising event, who knows. And we will also have our official district governor visit that week, July 12th. And so our birthday is the 15th, July 15th. We'll have our official DG visit on July 12th, which is our first program of the year. We won't have a program the week of the 4th of July, so we'll have a break there. But we will have a pool party that Diana and Barry will be hosting for us. We're very lucky to have them. Or Barry, is this a surprise for you?
No, not.
So we're looking to have that on Saturday, July 9. And then we're also, and we just need to figure out the time. I'll chat with Diana later to confirm a good time then. And then we're also looking to do a service project. And what we've done with that is Kevin came up with this great idea to ask previous speakers what their, if they would like us to do a service project for their organization or a cause that they care about. And so I sent an email out to the speakers whose emails I have from the past 12 months or so, and got back several replies already. So it looks like we'll have different options for to choose from, as well as maybe we can pick from that list, and members can decide if we want to do something later in the year for those organizations as well. So anything from ideas from Book Harvest to goodness, I'm blanking right now, but there's lots of ideas, and I'm sure there might be more emails. A lot of people reply saying, "Oh, this is a great idea. Let me get back to you. I'll get back to you later in the week." So I don't know what we're going to end up with. We might have too many, but more is better than less, I suppose. It's a good problem to have. Let's see. Next Tuesday, we will a program, and instead it's the Alzheimer's Awareness Night at the Durham Bulls game. So we actually were able to get a couple last-minute tickets. So if you haven't gotten a ticket and are interested, let me know. I can probably get Brady to get a couple more tickets. But there'll be about 64 at least other downtown Durham and Southwest Durham Rotarians there, along with our current 8 from our group. So I think it'll be a lot of fun. And So Rich and Eve and Diana, you have to take pictures, and then just email or text them to me, and I'll get them up on Facebook and Instagram and wherever. And let's see, the governor's installation banquet is next Wednesday on June 22nd. So you can sign up on DACTV to register for that. And the International Convention in Atlanta is next June, the 10th to the 14th in 2017. If you haven't already signed up, you would have missed the really big discount of $265, which I'm sure Barry will talk to us a little bit more about. But the current registration fee won't change again until December, I think. So we're good there. Let's see, what else do we have here? And then one thing that I wanted to share with everyone is last week I was part of a group representing our district, along with Joyce from Southwest Durham, Catherine from Raleigh Midtown, and Jason from North Raleigh. And we went along with Marie from the Oxford Club, who was our district representative. We were a group of young professionals being hosted in Atlanta by, it was a zone summit. There were maybe about 100 other Rotarians there, and it was very exciting because we got to talk about what the different challenges are for young Rotarians, the different ways and just different discussions about recruiting and retaining young Rotarians, Rotaractors, young professionals. And it's funny because in the end I came away thinking that, you know, the ways that we come up with recruiting and retaining young professionals really applies to all groups of people, oh, I didn't realize you guys were already recording. So I thought you were gonna wait. Anyways, it was a great time, and there'll be pictures that I'll be sharing in our newsletter. So, okay, back to you, Kevin.
Kevin.
There we go. Sorry about that. Novice, neophyte. Anyway, excited that we have a special guest speaker tonight. And we are privileged because I've been in Rotary for just a couple years. I've been able to hear some of the most clear and compelling announcements at various and sundry district events about the foundation, and very inspirational about what Rotary is doing and what your donations are doing and how the whole process works, because Rotary, I think, has gone through a lot of reflection over the many years in order to continue to be the best stewards of the money that people give to Rotary International. And I'm really excited to hear again. I've never really had anyone explain things so clearly and so compellingly to make you want to continue to deeply invest as much as I have Barry Phillips. So thank you so much. I'm going to turn, I think, Eve, are you going to give an introduction to our speaker?
I have a very succinct introduction. Can everybody see the screen? Barry?
Yep.
Can everybody see it? Okay. Sorry. When we asked Barry for his bio, so I wanted to share with you that he is the past district governor from 2007 to 2008 of District 7710. And he is the current Rotary Foundation chair for the district. And we're very, very happy to have you this evening, Barry. Thank you.
That's my pleasure. This is the first for me. I haven't given a talk via email or whatever we're going to call this, so I hope you'll bear with me if there's any slight hesitation. But Eva's promised to move the slides on in a sequence that I hope will be helpful. And I'm going to try to tackle this at a fairly basic level, but stop from time to time to see if there are any questions you might want to ask. So the first slide I've got up there is to ask a few open-ended questions. Why would anybody want to support a foundation? What does the foundation do? How is it that any one of us can get involved in what the foundation does? And who makes the difference and who does it benefit? So I'll try to cover all of those in the next few slides. So next one, please, Eve.
Okay. Sorry. Oh, good.
Here we go. So like any good organization, and the foundation's been around for almost 100 years, and I'll talk a bit about that later on, it has evolved and it has become able to describe, I think, pretty effectively what it is it's trying to do. In other words, what is its mission? So in writing, it says to enable Rotarians to advance world understanding, goodwill and peace through the improvement of health, support of education, and the alleviation of poverty. Now that covers a lot of things, and it covers many of the 6 areas of focus, which I'll touch on later, which Rotary has identified from a myriad of things it used to do in the past. It's become a little more focused over the years, and I think has benefited from that ability to focus. So next slide, if you would. It is, by the way, a not-for-profit organization, which means that when you give money to the foundation, you're able to use those donations as an offset against your taxes. So these are the 6 focus areas which came out of some introspection about 5 or 6 years ago. And if we look down them, you'll see that they cover many things which our district gets very involved in. And not just our district, but a lot of our clubs look to these 6 to give them their guidance as to how they want to interact with our own communities and the international community. Peace and conflict resolution. Hopefully you all know that Rotary has been running a peace and conflict program now as a formal program for the last 15 years, and that the UNC universities are part of that program. In fact, they're the only center that runs a master's program in the Americas. There are only 5 of them around the world, and we're very proud to have one here in our district. Second one you'll see is disease prevention and treatment. Third is water and sanitation, and the fourth one, maternal and child health. I see those 3 as being very much linked because they do affect each other, and certainly when we're working in less developed countries, we need to be thinking about all of those 3 as they interact and as we provide our assistance, our technology, and our money. Now the 5th and 6th one, basic education and literacy. A lot of our clubs in our district are very much into helping school systems in different ways, whether it be providing information and goods and property to teachers who don't have a lot of money to spend on their own, or whether it's providing dictionaries for schools, or going in and helping schools hands-on to assist teachers in their education process. So education is a big part of what we do. The last one I've always seen is a bit of a sort of grab all, because there's a lot of things you can do that will affect economic and community development, and they all are basically things that we would like to be doing if we want to help other communities. So there's a range of things that come under that sort of heading. So having identified these 6 focus areas, let's take a look at the next slide. We know now why we're supporting. Let's have a look and see how that works out. So I said the foundation is a not-for-profit organization. It has, over the years, I kind of sort of say, concentrated its efforts into 3 key areas, and you see them listed here at the top. It has an annual fund, and I'll talk more about that later. It has an endowment fund, and that's, as the name implies, it's where monies are put to one side and the revenue from it is used. And thirdly, and very importantly at the moment, we are very close to eliminating polio from the world as a disease. And it's become a very joint effort. But back in 1988, when Rotary first kicked this off, they were a lone voice in the wilderness as to what could be done by an international organization of volunteers to start to eradicate this horrible disease. We're close to finishing it, and there's only 2 countries left where it is endemic, and that is Afghanistan and Pakistan. And you'll hear a lot about this in the coming year, that we want to close that gap and make sure that this scourge is removed from the world. So let's talk about how the foundation uses this money. It's your money, my money that goes into it. So what happens to it? Well, first of all, it's developed a very interesting business model, which I'm not sure if it's a unique, but it's certainly different. Because when money is given, and let's sort of take an example. Let's say I give $100 to the annual fund this year. That money doesn't get spent for 3 years. Instead, it gets invested. And not just my money, but other money that came from my club, from your club, any of the clubs in our district, all adds up. And we know from year to year how much our district has given in annual fund. After 3 years, and during the period, just add that the interest from it is used to offset the cost of running the foundation. But after 3 years, we get to use half of that money directly. It comes back to us as something called district designated funds. And as a district, we have an opportunity to say, well, how much do we have coming back? And I'll put a nice round figure to it, which is pretty close to what we'll be getting next year, $200,000. So what do we do with that $200,000? Well, first of all, we want to make sure that the clubs that gave the money, the individual Rotarians that gave the money, have a chance to spend it, and spend it not just in their own district, but also in other communities. And so we take half of the 200,000 and say, we're going to make that available for district grants. And I'll talk more about how that works, but essentially we're going to be putting 100,000 off to one side. Any club can apply to get a district grant and use that district grant money that they put up and will be matched exactly dollar for dollar from the DDF. To give you an idea, this last year we did 34 district grants, and 80% of all of our clubs in the district took part in at least one of those district grants. And if you go back 3 or 4 years, that I wouldn't have been able to tell you those figures, anything like that. So there's been a major upsurge in how clubs realize that using the money that has been given to the annual fund, when it comes back to us, it's available to be used in our own communities and internationally. The remaining 100,000 we divide in 2 ways. We give 25,000 as a pioneer district to help the Peace Center. We've been doing that since year 1, and I don't see any change in our policy that we will stop doing it, because we believe that the Peace Center is playing a very important long-term role for what Rotary is trying to achieve. The other 75,000, plus any money that was left over unused from previous years, is available to be used for global grants. Now, I know your club, young as you are, have been active already in district grants, and I think you've been involved in at least assisting on a global grant. But if I'm wrong on that, I know I'm only wrong in terms of timing, because you will get to it. I've seen the activity you're involved in. I know one of the projects you've done around water in Africa. That should lead to a global grant, and I'm very happy to try and work and help you with that. So this is the business model which is so intriguing. Don't spend the money straight away. Invest it for 3 years, then make half of it available straight away back to the clubs and districts from whence it came. Make the other half available in a global grant, in a global fund, I should say, that we can get access to if we do a global grant. So it's pretty sophisticated, and it's become a very effective process. So you'll see the 4th bullet down there, or the 3rd one. It invests the endowment fund corpus, doesn't spend that money, but it does use the revenue. And some of that revenue is to run the foundation and to support existing programs. Now, the last bullet is on this one, talking about Polio Plus. For the last several years now, the Gates Foundation, really in recognition of how effective the Rotary has been in eradicating polio has said, look, we've got money, but we don't have feet on the ground. You have got the people to go and do this in places where it's needed. We will support you, not just support you, but we'll match $2 for every dollar that you put in. They max that out at 35 million, but now we're talking about 105 million if we can find 35 million from our clubs and our Rotarians. And we've done that for the last 2 years. This is a very generous match, but it's also an acknowledgement of how important Rotary has been by providing the manpower on the ground to go in and do eradication days and inoculation days. So next slide, please. Okay, did we miss one back there, Eve? Let's have a quick look. Slide one back. It may not be anything I haven't covered, but no. All right, let's move on to this one. I talked about district and global grants. The difference are, you'll see that the list of sort of characteristics on the left and right. District grants are normally domestic oriented, but they can be international. And where that's important is if an international project doesn't meet the basic minimum criteria that a global grant requires, which is it must be for a $30,000 project, you can still do an international project, but you'll be using designated funds from the district grant pile. You must spend money in the same Rotary year if you're doing a district grant. There's no foundation matching, but there is foundation, or there is money coming from the designated district designated funds. Here's the important part. The district will match up to $2,000 per club per project. Now, I mentioned there were 34 different projects done this year. Some of them were done by multiple clubs getting together. And that's a pattern which you wouldn't have been able to say several years ago, but it's becoming more and more apparent. And I think it's just a wonderful way because it helps a club that has yet to get experience doing a grant themselves learn how to do it by matching up with somebody else. And it makes the power of that accumulated financing very effective within the district. Now, we've already passed the deadline whereby next year's presidents have to suggest what they would like to do by way of a district grant. The reason we ask for it so early is that we need to compile those and have one request that goes up to Rotary Foundation, which we would call a block grant. So we've probably got to ask for something like $85,000 of the block grant, which will be made up of lots of individual 2,000, 500, 1,000, whatever from each club, with a 20% contingency for things that will come through during the year that have not yet been identified. It's an interesting system and it seems to be working pretty well. Projects must be completed by the middle of May, and you must have your final report in by the end of May. Now that doesn't leave, if you think about the Rotary year starting on July the 1st, we need to get money into the club's hands as quickly as we can so they've got that period in which they can spend it and use it. If we do not use all of our money that we've asked for in that block grant, the surplus rolls back into the global fund. It doesn't get lost. It's still sitting there available for us to use if we do global grants. So let's compare that to the global grant process. Global grants have to support one of those 6 areas of focus that I showed in an earlier slide. They have to be international. That is, they have to have another club in another country supported by another district in another country. Otherwise, it doesn't qualify. They can be a multi-year projects, so that they can start in the year 2016-17. Maybe they run for a couple of years, but they must be reported on every 12 months. Now, in the global grant, this is where we get the one-for-one World Fund matching, but they do set some criteria in terms of size. It's not a global grant unless it's at least $30,000, and the maximum for a global grant is $400,000. Now, that leaves us a lot of scope to do global grants. This last year, I think we finally did 7. Not all of those were maximized out by our district because they combined other districts as well. but 7 is a good, healthy number. I have to tell you that the process of doing a global grant involves quite a lot of paperwork and has to be approved almost line by line by Rotary International, who bring their expertise about that particular country and that particular area of focus. And they are particularly interested in whether what is going to be done within that global grant is sustainable. In other words, they've gone away from doing feel-good one-off type projects. They want to do projects that have been identified as being very much needed by the community where they will take place, and that community will be able to continue them even after the grant is finished. So you'll hear that word sustainability a lot. We do ask for proposal to be in by May. Realistically, often they come in bits and pieces during the year, and that's not a great problem, except that the later you put it in, the more chance you might find that the money's run out and you won't be able to do it in that particular year. The process itself is an online application directly between the lead club and Rotary Foundation, which means that our very effective and efficient Rotary Grants subcommittee can only help you so far when it comes to a global grant. They're very happy to look at a draft, help you with what things that they think might be a problem area, but at some point you have to apply electronically, and at that stage it is Rotary International dealing directly with you, and our grants committee are on the sidelines and can't help directly. Let me stop there for a second because it's fairly complicated stuff. Have I raised any questions that you want to raise back with me here? All right, well, let's look at, yes, question coming up.
I was just going to say, make sure you unmute your microphone if you have a question.
Oh, thank you, yes. All right, let's try the next slide then, please, Eve. So when I go and give a talk face-to-face with a club, I normally go in with a 2-page document, which I call the ABCs of Rotary Foundation. And I just try to define some of the terms that tend to get bandied about. And I've put some of these into the next couple of slides just to give you an idea. I also take with me some statistics showing what that club has given in the past, what they're giving now, how many people are sustaining supporters, how many people might have made a commitment through their will, etc. I don't get that chance with you guys, but we'll find a way of making sure that information gets to you. One way is to leave this particular PowerPoint as something you can all download at your own interest. So we've talked about grants, and I think I've covered this block grant idea already. Talked about the application dates, talked about maximum for globals. So let's move on past this slide. Thank you. One thing I didn't talk about earlier on, next, we've gone, flip the slide here, that one here, thank you. We are required as a district to certify back to Rotary Foundation that we have trained people at club level to understand how global and district grants operate. In order to be able to do that, we have to do the training. And in order to make sure that we're all sort of lined up correct, is that we ask all the people that come to the training, in practice, at least 2 people from each club, one of whom has to be the incoming president, to sign a Memorandum of Understanding. It's not a particularly onerous document, but it does set out the responsibilities. And if you're going to have cash and be spending it, there are some things you should be doing with that, like not intermingling with other club funds and knowing when to send in reports, etc. So we do 2 trainings a year. One early in the year in September. Sometimes it slides into October, but it's normally aimed at September. One in either late January or early February. And if there's any club that hasn't been able to get their 2 people qualified within those 2 trainings, I will make every effort possible to work with them one-on-one to make sure they get qualified. We don't want any club to be missing out on the chance to do district grants. Okay, let's see what it says at the bottom in red. Club application for DGs, and DGs are can you move the slide up a little bit? I'm missing the last line. Perhaps, what have we got down there, Eve? Can you read it? Because all right, not to worry.
It's, if you move your video, you can, oh.
Is that better?
Yeah, thank you. A jury made. We've covered that. Good. Next slide, please. So these are the 6 headings within the Memorandum of Understanding. I'm not going to dwell on them too much. Anybody that needs to have gone through the process will have had an hour and a half training and know everything they need to know. So let's move on from that. Thank you. So timelines, I know this is getting a bit repetitious, but your president-elect and 1 club member has got to attend one of those training sessions, and that we'd have to have DGs in, district grants completed by May. Okay, let's move on from that one. Sustainability. I did mention this earlier. I've mentioned it's become a key factor in getting approval from Rotary Foundation for a global grant. And you'll see there are 2 criteria. Has a global grant been identified that it will work with at least one of the 6 areas of focus? And that, frankly, is not normally difficult in any way, shape, or form. Sometimes it covers more than one. But the second one needs to be thought through. Must be sustainable. And to be sustainable, it's got to meet the following criteria. Now, there's a lot more words on some slides I could show you, but this is, in essence, what the 6 areas that they've identified as sustainability cover. First one is fairly obvious. In other words, is it meeting community needs? Now, the way that plays out is that if you've not done a needs assessment by directly contacting and working with the ultimate beneficiaries of this grant, you're not going to get it approved. You've got to be able to show that it's not just you thinking someone else needs a well to be driven. That community needs to say, we need the well for these reasons. So local sponsors and a local needs assessment are very important. Second one, to what extent can we source locally what materials and technology will be used in performing this grant? Because the more local you can source them, the more likely they are to be available for replacements, replenishment, maintenance, etc. Funding. Have you built into the budget not just the cost of doing whatever it is you've identified, but who's going to maintain and look after that project after you've got back on the plane and come home? They are very keen on making sure that maintenance is part of the global grant. The fourth one is fairly obvious, but it does need thinking about. To what extent will you be sharing knowledge as well as actually doing something? What education process have you built in? What degree of training? How will that help in terms of maintaining and sustaining? So they will be looking at what education transfer is going to be taking place. Motivation. Put very simply, where we go often to do grants, they may not have a lot of money, but they need to have some skin in the game. There need to be an incentive that makes them want this to happen and want it to be successful and want it to be continuing. So how you hand over a project to the local people, what they're going to do with it afterwards, that's a key part of the motivation. And then finally, and this always crops up, is can you measure what it is that you've made a difference with? And you've probably come across this acronym as SMART, a goal to be specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and timely. But they're pretty good ways in which you can start to think through the goals that you want to achieve. And I can tell you now that when you put something up as a draft form to our grants committee, they're going to be on this like a fly getting onto honey. They want to know, what are the measurables going to be? Tell me where the baseline is. Tell me how you're going to measure what difference you're going to make. So it's an important part, and it's key to making sure that this is going to be a worthwhile way to use our funds and our expertise. So next slide, please. So when it comes down to any one of us as an individual Rotarian, we do have to ask ourselves, if I want to be involved in this, if what I'm hearing and what I'm learning makes sense and it's something I want to get my part of as well, how do I do it? Well, you can donate in various ways. The way that Rotary loves best is to get involved in doing a direct transfer. So you put a credit card, monthly goes through, whatever. That saves a lot of paperwork later on. But a lot of people write a check, and there's nothing wrong with that either. If you're making a donation, there are forms you can download. There's a form 123, which indicates how you're making the donation and what part of the Rotary Foundation sort of range of opportunities you want to support. If you want to support this annual giving I've been talked about so far, you check off annual fund - share. If you want to do a Polio Plus, you check the box that says Polio Plus. If you'd like it to go direct to one of the key areas like a peace center, you can check that box. But essentially, you need to be ready to say, look, I think what we're doing makes sense. I'd like to be part of it, and here's some money I'd like to give. Now, in giving money, you get recognition. Recognition is basically 1 point for every dollar given. And you get recognition if you give money to the annual fund, to the endowment fund, to the Polio Plus, or if you give directly to a global grant. Because I need to add here that sometimes global grants coming out of a club are going to need more than 15,000, and that's the maximum that you can get as a match coming out of our district. So sometimes direct money is given by the club or by individuals into a global grant. When that happens, you get recognition 1 point for $1. Now those points add up. When you get to 1,000, you become a Paul Harris Fellow. And you'll see as a bullet down here, there's something called Paul Harris Society as well. That's for people who feel able to make a commitment to give $1,000 every year. But most people start off at this sustaining member level, which is $100 a year, and that makes you a sustaining member of the Rotary Foundation. It's interesting, we've got about 1.2 million members worldwide. If you apply that 100, you get to 120 million. Last year, the amount given globally was 115 million. So it's a pretty good average, that 100 a year. It doesn't work out very exactly because some parts of the world are more flush and more able to give than others, but it's not a bad place to start. And as a Rotarian in our district, it was a wonderful way to keep our annual fund building and make sure we have funds available to do good work both locally and internationally. Back to the little dots below. Major donors are people who can give 10,000 or more. And that gets recognition in a different way. A different pin gets given, and it goes up from a basic 10 until it reaches the last one on here, Arch Clump Society. Now that's a crazy name, isn't it? Arch Clump. But he happened to be the treasurer 100 years ago when they started what is now the foundation. And so there's a society in his name recognizing people who are able to give $250,000 and up. All right, let's have a look at the next one. Slide 13, please. So a bit more about points. So as I just said, gifts to the annual fund, Polio Plus, or to a global grant generate foundation points. You can use those points to help somebody else get to Paul Harris Fellow if you wish. Points often are transferred, and you may have seen something in a couple of the fairly recent newsletters. For several years now, we've been doing what we call a 50-50 match. We have a very generous Rotarian in our district who gives considerable sums each year to the annual fund, and he makes his points available. And what we do is to say, if someone wants to put $500 fresh money into the annual fund, this anonymous donor will match it with 500 points, and now you're immediately a Paul Harris Fellow. I can give you an idea of that because I've had some come in this week. So far, $23,000 have come in through this matching points program, the 50/50 program. Okay, next slide, please. I touched on the endowment fund, so let's talk a little bit more about that. If the annual fund can be talked of and thought of as a sort of a current account where the money's going to get spent sooner or later, the endowment fund we should think about as like a savings account. We're not going to spend the corpus or the core money that goes into an endowment fund. What we will spend is the revenue that it generates, and that revenue is available to support our programs. It says here capital is only used strategically and rarely, and that's in the time that I've been involved. I can remember 2 occasions when the interest revenue worldwide pattern dropped severely, and rather than start to cut programs, they did dip at that time into the endowment fund to make sure we kept things moving at a fairly even pace. But the rarely word is a good word, and it's honest. EREY is a term that you will hear bandied about every Rotarian every year. Give something to the foundation. If you can get it up to $100, that makes you a sustainable member, but give something. Next slide, if you would, please, Eve. Now, I'm going to get fairly technical here, but what I've been doing as I've been going around talking to clubs is asking people, certainly those of a certain age, to think about their legacy and think about what processes there might be, legal processes that might be available to use money in a gainful way to support their own financial needs, their own taxation needs, and also to support Rotary. So there are a couple of examples here, a CRUT and a CRAT. Let's just cut the middle letter out for a second, talk about CRTs. Charitable Remainder Trust. The name when you pass it out actually tells you a lot. Charitable because you have to give money that will eventually finish up in a charitable institution, of which Rotary is a very good example. The trust part means that it is a legal document, an irrevocable legal document. In other words, once it's in place, you can't change your mind and take the money away again. The remainder is the interesting part here, because it means that the money that transfers only transfers after a certain event has taken place, which is normally the death of the person setting up this trust. And it's what's remaining in the trust that finally goes to the charity. Now, why is it interesting? Because you'll see at the bottom there, tax efficient estate planning, and the words win-win-win. Whether you do a remainder unit trust or a remainder annuity trust, 3 things happen. Some money eventually goes to Rotary Foundation. You will have some of that money that you've given available to offset against your current taxes. And the final win, and it's a big one, is that you will receive an interest return on that money during your lifetime. And it gets fairly complicated. You could have 2 lives. You could have yourself and your spouse, and it's only till the second one dies that that money flow stops. On the annuity, you are governed by what the government and annuity tables tell you can get back, and it depends on your age. With a remainder unit trust, which is particularly useful if you could put more money in at a different time, in other words, increase the amount of the CRUT rather than just having one flat figure. You can nominate how much you want to get back by way of interest. There are some limitations to that, but it can be pretty generous. So the bottom line is that there's lots of ways in which Rotary Foundation has expertise at the head office level and at the zone level, and to a certain degree at district level through someone like myself, to help you think about how you might want to start to build up a process that will take a long-term view of estate planning. The third one that's there, the charitable gift annuity, I think I have another slide coming up to talk more about that. So let's try the next slide, if you would, please. So a charitable gift annuity, can't do it until you're 50. That cuts a few of you out, because I know you're a pretty young club. There's a minimum gift size of 10,000, but that also gets you major donor recognition. The current rates that are out there for CGAs run from about 3% if you're a 50-year-old up to just above 7%. And I put it here, a person of advanced years. So it's a very tax efficient process because you are able to tell Rotary where you would like the revenue from this gift annuity to go, as long as it's going to charity and not back to your own family. So one good way of what a lot of people do is to set one of these up at the level that throws off $1,000 a year and basically uses that to either use it for their own Paul Harris Fellow or to give to somebody else. Next one, if you would, please. I only touched on these two things earlier, so a little more detail here. If you write Rotary Foundation into your will and put it at a level of $1,000 minimum, then you basically are a benefactor. And as such, you get recognized and again, get a little pin to show that you've made that decision. All it takes is sending Rotary a copy of that particular document, evidencing that you've made that commitment. If you crank that up to 10,000, then now you're a member of the Bequest Society. So that's not something our district has been particularly keen on talking about in the past, but it's something that I think is relevant. We can't ignore the fact that all of us at some stage will pass through those pearly gates. Why not think about how you want to use the money? The last time I heard, nobody's shroud has a pocket in it, so you might as well think about what to do with your cash. Next slide, please. Donor advised funds. Now, this is a sort of play on the CRA. It's where Rotary will invest money on behalf of individuals, but by pooling money that they get, they're able to make some pretty good, sensible investments. So basically, an individual gives irrevocably a tax-deductible contribution, minimum 10,000. The Rotary Foundation uses 4 different professional managed portfolios, and then you have to basically tell Rotary what you'd like done with the revenue coming from that. Rotary does take a $250 charge directly to the foundation for doing this, but it does generate all the paperwork for you, and is a pretty good choice for not just individuals, but some clubs have started DAFs because they find that's an interesting way of being efficient about their own paperwork. So the bottom line in red there, 25,000 gives enough spin-off to get you a Paul Harris Fellow annually. Let's go to number 19, please. Bit of background about how the foundation functions. I think you know already that most of the positions in Rotary rotate, they change every year. Every president only lasts for 1 year, then they move on. Every club president, the same way. There are a few jobs where jobs last 2 years, sometimes 3. There's only one that I know of that lasts 4, and that is to be a trustee of the foundation. And there are 4 of the 15 have to be past international presidents, but then they go outside within Rotary members to get the expertise they need to put this board together. And the trustees, I think, do a pretty good job. They're elected each year, but they, as I say, they run for 4 and they have a rotating, rolling process. I've mentioned already it's a not-for-profit organization. The next couple of slides, I think, are going to talk about how efficient this foundation is. So slide 20. There are a number of organizations out there that independently look at different charities and rate them on a range of 0 up to 4 as to how efficient they are. And I can tell you that the Charity Navigator is one of the big ones, and we get the highest score possible, 4 out of 4. The reason we don't get any higher is they don't quite understand this process we have of investing for 3 years and then using the money. But I can tell you, and the next slide will back this up, if $100 is given, 92 of those dollars will get spent eventually into grants of one kind or another. Only 8 get spent on basically overhead and marketing. Now, I don't know what happens in your house, but we get calls normally about supper time, people asking for money. And I become a little bit cheeky. I say, well, I'm interested in what you're trying to do. Can you tell me if I give you $100, how much of it will go to this dog's home or whatever they're talking about? And the figures I get back are remarkably low. None of them come anywhere near 92%. So I explained to them that I applaud what they're trying to do, but basically I'd rather give my money to someone that's more efficient and where I know where the money's going to get used. So that is a little bit of trivia, but what I want to emphasize is that this has become a very efficient, very good process by way of the money that gets donated will be used effectively, and it will be used to a very large extent at your discretion, because you are the ones that write the district grants and the global grants. So next slide, if you would, number 21. Well, here's those figures I talked about. 92 go towards program expenses, 2% to admin, 6% for fundraising. And I think the next slide may be the last one I have here. Yeah, just this is one example, I touched on it earlier, of a long-term commitment that we are making within Rotary that I think is important, and that is to keep supporting our Peace Center. And I hope you guys at some stage will invite through the Peace Center one of their existing fellows to talk to you, give a talk like I'm giving tonight about why they chose to come to this center, what they hope to get from it, how they will use that in the future, what difference it's going to make to world peace. That concludes my talk, and I know I've used up almost all of your time, but I'd be happy to take questions if there are any.
Barry, this was great. Anyone have a question? Make sure you unmute your microphone.
Well, this is Gene Perry, and it's more of a comment. It seems like the Rotary Foundation does a remarkable job with the funds that are provided. So no, I'd like to take my hat off to Rotary Foundation for the work it does. And hopefully in the coming year, our organization will be more involved in foundation work as well.
I'm sure you will. And thank you, Gene, for your comments. I appreciate them. You okay?
So,
Go ahead, Gian.
so you mentioned that the grant applications have already been submitted. Would you be able to share maybe a few of the projects that you think will be, that are very, fascinating or very impactful?
I wish I could. I haven't seen the list, to be honest with you, Gene, but if they're like last year's, they're going to be pretty broad in their range. I know some will involve education. There are some clubs that every year want to give a dictionary to everybody in the middle school in their local town or whatever. There'll be some that will be directed, I can predict, to things like putting together meals that will go to be used either locally or internationally. That's a very effective program. They did a wonderful, I think, 100,000 plus meals organized by the Research Triangle Park Club, but supported by many other clubs in the Durham area.
Yes.
And they plan to do that again, I think, in Martin Luther King Day, so next, whatever, February. But I've been very agreeably surprised by the innovation shown by different clubs, saying, we've talked to our local community, we have understood they have a need, this is what we'd like to do to meet that need. So there really is no constraint for a district grant. Provided there's a need out there, you can find a way to deal with it.
So on our list for this upcoming year, we're supporting 3 district grants with the Fill That Bus campaign, with the MLK meal packaging that you mentioned, that's sponsored by the Southwest Durham, Downtown Durham, RTP.
Right.
Will be one of those clubs included. And then we're also helping out the Durham Sunrise, their service project Backpack Buddies as well with their.
That's great. Yeah, that Durham Sunrise Club is only a small club, but they are very active. They've been doing that bad backpack buddies for a long time. It's a great program. So I commend you for all three.
Thanks. Have you? Go ahead if someone had another question.
Well, I want to thank Eve for helping me out with the slides. That worked very well, Eve. Thank you.
Glad I was a little jilty there for a few minutes.
Well, we did good.
We worked it out. Thanks.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
Hey, Bear, I have another question if no one else has another question, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Have you seen more clubs collaborate with the new grant model?
Yes.
Is it a lot? Do you feel like that's an improved?
Yes, I do. It's a remarkable turnaround. I wish I could give you hard numbers, but I know I've seen them rise in the 2 years I've been involved. And it used to be that the old grant system, it didn't even have the same name, but it did the same purpose, was very much a one-off. One club did something in its own little community, full stop. Now what's happening is clubs are saying, what does our broader community need? And although we can't find all the money ourselves, and in fact, Rotary District won't give us any more than 2,000 to a match, what if we got 3 or 4 clubs together, we all put 2,000 in, we're putting 8,000 in comes 8,000 back from the district designated funds, now we've got 16,000. You apply that to a need and suddenly you've refurbished a schoolyard playground, or you've put in a meeting place at the prison where people can bring their families and meet with inmates and incarcerated people. You make a difference in a big way when you start to combine. So your question was, have I seen an increase? Absolutely, I have. And I find that one of the reasons that turns me on in this job is that we are getting better and better and better at using the money that we're giving to make a difference.
Wonderful.
Larry, again, this has been fantastic. Every time I hear you speak, I learn more and things become more clear. And the work of Rotary, and I think one of the things that's interesting is how much Rotary has been very reflective as an organization. And, over the past, like you said, even maybe just going back to deciding to focus on polio. And then, 15 years ago, another big change. And then maybe, I think you said 6 or so years ago, with the areas of focus. And then, just even within our district, having more clubs get involved. It's almost like we're hitting some sort of point of inflection with effectiveness, with people getting involved in Rotary, and then over the course of time realizing what does it mean to be a Paul Harris Fellow. Maybe you got started in Rotary, you might not have those funds, but you can now begin to plan, and you say, this is something I want to do, and be able to help each other to become Paul Harris Fellows, and really share this model of giving back to your community and in a way that other people can see without boasting, in and of yourself, or boasting about the opportunity that Rotary gives to make a difference in our communities.
You're hitting every hot button there. The year I was district governor, our annual motto was a very short one: Rotary shares. And I used to talk to clubs and say that we're not just sharing money, we're sharing our talent, our time, our expertise, our energy, our enthusiasm, our vision. And what you've just said is really important around the vision part, because I've seen Rotary change, and it's changing as the world is changing and as the needs of the world change, but they're changing with thoughtfulness. They're saying, if we look to the future, these are the areas and the elements that we need to be dealing with. How do we do that? And given that it's an organization that keeps changing leadership so rapidly, I still am amazed how effective it can be. And it's largely because of the training and the thoughtfulness that goes into preparing people for each job that they take on. And it's one of the side effects that doesn't get much fanfare, but I see Rotary as a wonderful organization for anybody that wants to be involved in middle management or higher. But it's a training ground for learning about what is needed and how you communicate with other people, how you lead a diverse group to achieve things that individually they could not do. It does all of that, and it does it in a way that, you know, promotes friendship and promotes peace.
Barry, could I ask one quick question before we go?
Sure.
Rich, it's really just tangentially, it deals with the funding issues or the funding information that you just shared with us. And it's more really about organization. And and I'm asking this question because I'm really I'm fairly new at this. And we always talk about Rotary International as though it's a partner with us, even though it's huge. One has to imagine they have a large staff because it's very big business. There's a lot going on there, so they must have a lot of staff members dealing with all of the funding issues and other issues that they do handle. And then it seems to be that we go to the district level, and there seems to be nothing in between. And I know the district level doesn't have a large staff. It's probably just people who happen to know how to do things. They learn it, you know, over the course of time, and they just do it. But is there anything that cements Rotary between the international level, which we hear about almost as though they're our partners, but they really are the mothership, and then the district level? You never hear Rotary National or anything in between, where you'd expect to see a staff. You know, it's a large organization. You'd expect to be a staff taking care of these issues, but something not quite as large as international. International seems to be everywhere. Like it's got tentacles everywhere, dealing at very, very low levels. There must be something in between.
There is. There's almost another topic I could talk about, but there's what's called a zone structure. There are 34 geographic zones around the world, and every zone, every two zones, I should say, have a director. So when you look at Rotary International, it has directors in the same way that Rotary Foundation has trustees. Those directors serve for 2 years, and they provide, if you like, the link between Rotary International, headquartered in Evanston, and what happens at the district level. So what happens is that we are part of Zone 33, and that geographically means that zone starts in parts of Maryland, picks up parts of West Virginia, includes Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. Zone 34 then goes south from there and starts with Georgia, Florida, goes all through the Caribbean. When the two zones get together, and they call these meetings zone institutes, there are 28 different countries represented. It's like a mini United Nations. And it's at those zone institutes that the district governors start and get their detailed training, which culminates by everyone goes off to San Diego in the February before they take office. And that's when all 532 district governors get the same basic information. But the zone structure is important. And what happens is that some very dedicated individual Rotarians move up through the district level and start to operate on an unpaid basis at the zone level. So they are operating as zone this and zone that, or regional this or regional that. And they support someone like myself as a district foundation chair. I've got a couple of people I can go through without having to bother anybody at Rotary International if I need assistance. So that is a way that the organization is structured. It starts off with the directors, moves down through those directors into the zones into districts into clubs.
Okay, so so the funding, is it all parceled out by international? It's handled entirely by international and filters down through the different tiers that you're talking about?
Yeah,
Just stop.
broadly, yes, it does, Richard. There's two levels of funding, which you'll see this at the club level. A club has to have some funds to function. So there's a membership concept takes place, which could differ from club to club. But those part of those club funds that you pay as an individual get paid to the district. So the district has a budget it can operate from. But another part of it goes off to Rotary International. So there's dues being paid by every one of us every half year to Rotary International. So those basically cover the admin level of Rotary International. What I've been talking about tonight is a slightly different animal, because the foundation started 100 years ago, going to have this massive celebration in Atlanta next year. But its funds are kept separate from Rotary International and how it operates the clubs. Its funding is only about projects. So the question is, if anybody gives more and more money, there's more and more money to do projects. Now, there's obviously, in some cases, you've got same people being involved because they're both Rotarians and they're operating under a foundation project. But essentially, the two pockets of money are separated deliberately and are kept that way for very good reasons.
Okay, thank you very much. That helps, and I apologize to everyone for getting off the mark a little bit, but that's...
No, I don't think that's off the mark. I think that is a very fair question to ask.
Okay, thank you.
I think that was a great question, and this has been a really, really good discussion. Barry, thank you so much. This is something that I see why everyone needs to have this annually, because even though you learn it, you learn more every time. We're going to go ahead and ask Jean to lead us in the four-way test as we conclude this meeting.
Okay, the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
That is our Rotary meeting for tonight. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. Glad to see our good Dr. Joseph Reardon has probably saved a few lives tonight, or is about to. But we thank you, Joe, for all you do in the Rotary E room, the emergency room.
Great to see you all.